My pleasure to now introduce today's speaker, John Supino. John will share how a New Yorker found his way to Fresno and to at least 3 different and distinct careers: teacher coach, in insurance and investment, and as the first and still only Catholic Parish Life Coordinator Administrator in the Fresno Diocese that stretches from Tehachapi to Merced. After 7 years of studies, John was ordained a deacon in the Catholic faith in 2003. So using his formal deacon title, my pleasure to bring up the Reverend Mr. John Supino.
It's quite an honor, and I'm honored by the presence of many of my parishioners from Newman Center, my family as well. My job is a little unusual in that I'm the only pastor in the Catholic Church who's not a priest. And I said from all the way from Frazier Park down in Kern County all the way up to Hillmar up in Merced County. Number one, you've heard it before, God works in mysterious ways. And I'm going to add another bit to that. He's got an outrageous sense of humor. You know, my story begins in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx, in the shadows of Yankee Stadium, probably about 20 blocks from the stadium, and probably just another mile to the Polo Grounds where the original New York Giants come from. So I come by my fanaticism very honestly. Both my mom and dad were Italian immigrants. They came over here at the turn of the century. Dad had to be a Yankee fan because the Yankees had DiMaggio, Rizzuto, Berra, Lazzari, Crissetti, Raschi. Who else would he root for? It was the only sport he understood anyway. But my older brother, who would be 91 this year, Bob was a Giant fan. His favorite player was Mel Ott. Now, I don't know, some of you might remember the great right fielder who held the Giants' home run record until Willie Mays came along. So, being that close to baseball all my life, it was wonderful. After Mass on Sunday, Pop would change clothes. My mom would feed us, go to the ballpark. And when the Giants and the Yankees were in town, the Giants were in town. So my brother would take me to see the Giants. I had the best of both worlds. Baseball meant a great deal to me. It really was a cement in our family. Although my mother didn't understand a lick of it. She loved it because she saw her sons going out with their dad. It was the only chance my dad had to be with us. Looking back on that thing, now you saw how a journey develops. I found it very curious because my dad was a wonderful person. I don't want to get wrong, but he was not a churched man. As a matter of fact, he kind of was not wild about organized religion. Okay? And so I always thought, how in the world did a man he was a men's tailor. He was a tailor. He wasn't a wealthy man. How in the world did he figure out to pay my tuition for 12 years, starting at elementary school, all the way through high school, sacrificed so I would get that kind of parochial education, to get the sound foundation that the nuns and the brothers and the priests gave me. So I'm eternally grateful for that because, you know, I don't think Pop saw the inside of a church maybe 5 times in his life. One of those times being his own funeral, you know. So he just, and believe me, he taught me the right way to live. He taught me about ethics and morals. Spoke about ethics an awful lot. So I think really my first call, I'm talking about Sam, but that first call really did come as a child because I saw myself in a family with no one ever going to Catholic schools. No uncles, aunts, brother, no one. I was the one chosen. So I felt kind of special in that respect. And of course, as I said, the influence of the nuns and the brothers really brought my faith to fruition. I thought that convincing my father was such an unexpected event. I thought it was a miracle between my brother and one of my uncles. They finally got my dad to move to Fresno. And this was 1953. Well, in 1953, I had gone through, I was 13, entering 8th grade when we moved to Fresno. But at Memorial was really a wonderful experience for me because, again, I was in heaven. I had a football field, I had baseball diamonds, I had a swimming pool, grass. I mean, it was wonderful. And I think it's here that I really got a call to go into the religious life. You know, the brothers, the Christian brothers, are no longer there. But I was recruited not to play baseball. I was good field, no hit. But they wanted me to join the brothers. And also there was a particular priest who was a friend, and he talked to me about maybe going into the priesthood. And I really thought heavy about it, that call. But I guess there were too many other things going on in my life. And in high school, I suddenly discovered I liked girls. And so being either a celibate priest or a celibate brother, although I wanted to be a teacher at that time, just wasn't for me. So Memorial was a wonderful experience as a student. Graduated from Salem Key Memorial in 1958. My first experience at Fresno State was not an overwhelming success. I wasn't very happy in school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was floundering a little bit. Grades went south. So I decided, this is not the place. I finished my 60 units. I got through my sophomore year. And I said, I've got to stop for a while. Remember, it was the time of the Vietnam War, 1962, 1961, somewhere in that area. And so I decided I didn't want to join the regular Army, but I said, I need to get away. I joined the Army Reserve, National Guard. Had, boot training at Fort Ord, and then went on and back east to Virginia. I wound up being in quartermaster. And when the enemy came, I threw my typewriter at him. That was my, I learned how to type in the Army. At least I learned that. Yeah. So anyway, that was a worthwhile experience. I did a little growing up, and I was still, to be honest with you, I still had this idea of possibly becoming a priest or a brother. But I did come back, return to Fresno, 1962, 63, and it was that time I heard about this Newman Center group that was forming. So I began to develop some relationships there, and then God was, always tapping me on the shoulder. That's where you should be. I mean, I got that message clear, loud and clear. So, and it was a great place because it really began my 52 or 53-year relationship with the Newman community. Well, while I was going to Fresno State, the second tour of duty, I was working at Long's Drugs in the retail end of things, and I thought that was also a great experience. I learned people. I learned to work with people. I learned wonderfully nice people. I learned about some grumpy people. I learned about people who were just willing to be there for others, and I learned those who were very selfish. You just run the gamut. But it was a great experience for me. And I remember a couple of the managers wanted me to quit school and said, why don't you come work and become into management? Then I got a closer look at it, and they were working weekends. They were working, the holidays were worse than the normal days. Retail business was, and of course after the holidays, all the gifts came back. That made it worse. So I saw that, I don't think I want to do that. Now, just think, I didn't want to work weekends. I didn't want to work holidays. I didn't want to work evenings. What am I doing? But I don't regret it. Not a lick. 1965 comes along. We're married. Our 3 children. First one in 67. Next one 69. 73. Good. I did it. All right. And I finally achieved one goal. I got my teacher credential. 1965, 66. And again, another unexpected thing happened. I got a call, and I really don't remember. I think it was from someone in Monsignor Flood's office. He was the pastor of St. Anthony's, who said, we have a job opening here. I heard you got your teacher credential. So I was hired as the 8th grade teacher at St. Anthony's Elementary School. I was only there 1 year. That 1 year introduced me to some wonderful people again. And some of my students are now business leaders in this community. And doing very well. And I'm very proud of feeling I've made a contribution to their lives. Well, the next year, unexpectedly again, I got a phone call. It says, hey, there's an opening here at Memorial. You want to come? I said, sure. So I basically graduated with my 8th grade kids to Memorial. Okay? And so in 1967, my first year on staff at Memorial. And again, I never expected to go into coaching. I really didn't. I had a bachelor's degree in history, the minor in Spanish. and I taught some English. I even taught a religion class or two at Memorial. But that was where I thought I belonged, in the classroom. But it just so happens the very first week of my first year, I had gotten my classroom together somewhat. I'm not the most organized guy when it comes to putting things on blackboard, so I did my best. But I had to go out to the field to see what was going on. First week of football practice. Okay? So I go out there, and I guess just like God does when he looks down on us, I went, oh my God, look, 80 kids out there at the JV football team with 2 coaches. One was a football coach, and the other guy was Tom Cleary. Now, Tom was a basketball coach and knew less about football than I did, okay? And all I knew about a football was strangely shaped, and when you dropped it, it bounced funny. That's what I knew about football. So I'm watching this go on, and I made the big mistake. I said, you guys need any help? It's just organizing. So they said, sure. Well, of course, so I worked 1 year free. I didn't get paid, and I was assistant line coach. God help us. I didn't know what I was doing. Assistant line coach. Well, we survived that year, Tom and I both. Next year, my second year, they said, you know, we really need, we'll pay you next year if you work as a line coach again at the JV level. I said, okay, sure, why not? Believe me, and the interesting thing about me coaching, you know, when it came to baseball, I lived the sport. I studied. I felt I was a student. When it came to football, absolutely nothing. I was going, if I had Google, if I had been able, I would have been great. I'd have been looking up how to block, how to tackle. I didn't know any of that, so I'm reading books. I went to the football coaches and said, you know that class you took at Fresno State for Football 101? Can you give me the binder? I need to look at it. And that's the way I coached. I was one step, maybe, ahead of the kids. Well, I'm in my second year of coaching JV football now, and they said, well, you know what? We were going to have an off-campus coach come on and coach JV baseball, and that was just right for me. I said, great, I'll do that. So I coached JV football at JV football and JV baseball that 1 year. Of course, again, I don't know how I survived football, but baseball was a very rewarding year. Well, then the next year was really amazing because I was now an experienced line coach, my third year. We had a change. We had a varsity baseball coach who was an ex-Fresno State pitcher who wanted to move on to the junior college ranks coaching. So he left. So there was a big discussion as to who's going to be the varsity baseball coach. Now you got Supino here who doesn't have a lot of experience, but I felt I knew the game, and I had an athletic director who was our head football coach as well, who really trusted me, had confidence in me, and said, John, I don't care. A lot of people didn't want me to coach, and I was following Mike Matheson. If you know, Mike had coached, and then this Virgil DeGeorge, and here's this little kid from Memorial who couldn't hit, wore thick, and I had Coke bottles for glasses. And Bruce said, John, I want you to coach, and I accepted the job. Well, 1969, football team, 9-0-1. Baseball, 10-0 in the league. First team to go undefeated in the Sequoia League in the history of the school. Now, I was blessed with wonderful athletes, a couple of them who had a cup of coffee in the major leagues. One went on to play in Japan. He's now a minister, by the way. I just was blessed, and going forward a little bit, I can remember, I see in my mind's eye the young man who played JV football for me making the interception to save the tie in our last game of the year. And it was against Fresno High, and they had a great team. He intercepted. I am baptizing his grandson this coming Sunday, okay? And that's happened too. That's an awakening experience, baptizing grandchildren of the kids you coached. So that was the start of my coaching career, you know. But I was, and of course, still maintaining my academic standard in the classroom. All the while, I started working towards my master's degree in guidance and counseling, which is really where I wanted to go with this thing. So I got my MA. I was appointed director of guidance and counseling, and there was a 2-year period where the principal wouldn't let me coach and be the director of guidance at the same time. So I had a little hiatus there of 2 years and then came back. And in 1977, money called. And what I mean that is you can imagine what I was making in a parochial school, trying to support a family and wanting my wife to be a stay-at-home mom. That was very important. And so at the insistence and the cajoling and the arm twisting of my brother, who was in sales, and my father-in-law, who was a very successful insurance agent for many years, convinced me that I needed to, although I might have loved what I was doing, and I truly did, I just couldn't afford to stay there any longer. And I was just, in a state of denial, I think, but I said, okay. So 1977, I left Memorial in tears and went to work in the insurance industry. And again, that was an unexpected call, too. I never expected to be in sales, although I guess that's what I was doing in high school, selling the kids on doing the right thing, on studying, making a future for yourself. And so as I went on in the insurance business and I was getting into my 50s, I began to thinking, what am I going to do? Another 8, 9 years, 10 years, it's as I start thinking about retirement, because I had seen a lot of some of my contemporaries who were a little older than I failing miserably at retirement. I didn't want to get old and die. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a contribution. All the time I've been doing, Father Negro had been mentoring me at the Newman Center, and I've been doing lay ministry. I ran the youth program at the center while I was teaching and coaching. And it just happened, and again, this is one of those unexpected things. Opened the Fresno Bee on a Sunday morning in 1995, and read a section I never read. I used to read the sports page and the business section and the news. And this was one of those insights or those little periodicals almost that period. And I see an article in there about these two gentlemen, one from Selma and one from Fresno, traveling to the Oakland Diocese twice a month, not just once, twice a month for a whole weekend to begin a study towards formation of becoming permanent deacons. Okay. And I really admired them for making this tremendous sacrifice, and not only them, but their families as well. 2 weekends of every month being gone, Friday night through Sunday night, to study, to serve God. And having been associated and tied to the church for so long, I said, that sounds like my cup of tea. And so I think right there, I finally heard the call. And I said, yes, Lord, I hear you. I hear you. And it was at that point in my life that it really took such a strong direction. So that began a 7-year stint, 3 years of basic training, I guess you might say, in the basics of ministry. And then another 3.5 years in the formation program where I had to make a commitment after the first 3 years to go into the diaconate. Those 7 years were pretty demanding, considering I was still working full time. And for the first 3 years, it was a 3 hours a week study period, 3 hours a week. After I made a commitment to get into the program, it became 1 weekend a month. Lucy had to attend with me. We got there at 7 o'clock, 7:30 every Saturday morning, and left at Sunday evening. And I also had an additional evening of study and group discussion. And after that 7-year period, not as intense as seminary training, but nonetheless strenuous. I was ordained a deacon 13 years ago, this past January. And I think to clarify a little bit, because again, it's a separate ministry from the priesthood. Okay, as I said, priests take a vow of chastity, celibacy. They're unmarried, and typically the Catholic population expects a pastor to run the church. Okay, that's tradition. Okay, and a couple of unexpected things happened again in 2008. The first 5 years of my ministry were just as I expected. Okay, I worked with the poor, I visited the sick in hospitals, I taught and preached God's word from the pulpit and in the marketplace. I witnessed marriages, I baptized, presided at wakes and funerals. I taught classes, conducted prayer services, and provided as much as we could help for the marginalized to improve living conditions among the homeless. But then in April 2008, the unexpected struck again. Father Perry Kavuchian, who many might know, is now Monsignor. He's come up in the world. He's not any taller, but he's a Monsignor. I can say that because he was one of my students at San Joaquin Memorial. Perry was reassigned to Bakersfield by the bishop. He was told to start another church in 2008, begin a whole new parish. So that was kind of a shock. Because as you know, and as we get older, it gets worse. Change is difficult. Change not only for those who worked with him, but change for the parishioners. Okay, no difference. It was just a difficult time. And unfortunately, we had a replacement that only lasted 6 months. I called it our pastor disaster. It was. God help us. I was caught in the middle. Anyway, he left after 6 months, and there we were, pastorless. Okay, and this is October of 2008. I got a call from Bishop John Steinbach, and he called me and said, well, I've got to tell you this story. There was an occasion at church that happened when this pastor decided to walk off and leave us. He was very upset. He had a lot of problems. And so it was kind of a public spectacle that occurred. And that evening, on my cell phone, I get a phone call. Hi, hello, this is John. John, this is Bishop. I thought someone was kidding me. Bishop John? Yes, it's Bishop. You're kidding. No, he says, this is really me. And quote unquote, first words, he said, John, what the hell is going on down there? Because he was upset, called me into his office. And when the CEO calls you, you go in. We had a nice long talk, nice long chat in October, Monday morning, October 2008. And after about three-week discernment period, he said, John, I want you to take over the church. And he said, we're beginning this new ministry. You've been there for over 50 years or close to 50 years. I think you can do the job, and I think you'll be accepted by your parishioners. And thank God, basically that's what happened, although it was a difficult ride. To this day, I still have people say, when are we going to get a priest? Well, I got to explain this to you. We had a priest from day one, except he wasn't the administrator. He administered the sacraments. He said Mass every day. He heard confessions, which we do in the Catholic faith. By the way, I hear lots of confessions. I just can't give absolution from sin. That's okay. So, so in 2008, my third life began. My third life began, and thank God, the grace of God and the Holy Spirit. We have started to grow again. We're in a growth pattern. We have 1,200 families now, which is a kind of, in Fresno is a medium-sized parish. We've been able to stay in the black. And of course, as you well know, finances are an important part of doing our work. And of course, one of the things that I kept asking God, I said, you really do have a strange sense of humor. You give me this unique job, but you throw the Great Depression right on top of that, you see? And so now we've got this economy that's gone south, and we're here trying to, it was really a battle. It was really a battle between battling the spiritual side and the physical side. But as I said, we're in a growing pattern. Our ministries are grown. I've had a wonderful staff. Probably, I think, of the 10 members, I think five of them all have advanced degrees. We've are growing in especially our youth programs, which I'm especially proud of, and high school and college. As a matter of fact, coming into town today, we are interviewing a young man from Notre Dame who is hopefully going to take over our campus ministry program for Fresno State, Fresno Pacific, Fresno City College, and those areas of our ministry. And so, it's very customary. I want to close with this. It's very customary for the Catholic Church to ordain their deacons on the day that we celebrate the baptism of our Lord. And so I'd like to quote to conclude with a quote from our pastor, our founding pastor, Father Sergio Negro, who spoke these words about the baptism of Jesus about 25 years ago. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon us. In baptism we have been chosen, as Jesus was, to be God's servants, the instruments of his kingdom. We have been called to dedicate our lives to bring forth justice to the nations, to establish justice on the earth. Not just legal justice and the protection of personal rights, but the righteousness that is from God, that looks for the right order and the fullness of being in everything that is. We are not called to make a big noise or to put on a big show, but to work quietly and earnestly to protect the weak. We are to shelter the feeble flame that is about to go out and hold it until it can rise up again. We are to work gently and tenderly to prevent the bruised reed from breaking and to make the broken whole again. It is in baptism that God, in the gift of His Spirit, has grasped us by the hand, has formed us and shaped us, and has called us to be the sign, the visible concrete presence of His covenant in our world.